Hello, I am Mike.
Hello, I am Lily. Welcome to English Podcast Flow.
Today's episode is about how to stop wasting your time and become more productive. So if you're ready to ditch the distractions, boost your productivity, and make the most of every minute, then buckle up because this episode is for you.
That's right, Mike. We all know that time is a precious resource, and once it's gone for good. But in today's fast-paced world, it's easier than ever to fall into the trap of wasting time on things that don't really matter. So we're going to give you the tools and techniques you need to take control of your time and start living a more fulfilling and productive life.
So let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. What does wasting time even mean? It seems like such a simple question, but when you really think about it, it's actually quite complex. Because what one person considers a waste of time, another person might consider a valuable use of their time.
That's an excellent point, Mike. It's all about perspective and aligning your activities with your goals and values. For example, spending an hour scrolling through social media might be considered a waste of time if you're trying to finish a work project, but it might be a perfectly acceptable way to relax and unwind after a long day.
Exactly. It's not about demonizing certain activities, but rather about being mindful of how we're spending our time and making sure that our actions are aligned with our priorities. So let's dive into some of the usual suspects when it comes to wasting time, those sneaky little time bandits that steal our precious hours without us even realizing it. What are some of the things that you see people struggling with the most, Lily?
Well, Mike, one of the biggest culprits is undoubtedly social media. It's designed to be addictive, and it's very easy to get sucked into the endless scroll of updates, notifications, and cat videos. Studies show that the average person spends over 2 hours a day on social media, which adds up to a significant chunk of time over the course of a week, a month, or a year.
It's like a black hole for time. You sit down to check your notifications for a few minutes, and before you know it, an hour has gone by and you've accomplished absolutely nothing. It's happened to the best of us.
And it's not just the time we spend on social media itself, it's also the impact it has on our focus and productivity. When we're constantly switching between tasks and checking our phones, it takes a toll on our ability to concentrate and get things done. It appears that it fragments our attention and makes it harder to engage in deep work.
It's like trying to read a book while someone's constantly tapping you on the shoulder and asking you questions. You can't fully immerse yourself in the story, and you end up feeling frustrated and unproductive.
Exactly. So it's essential to develop strategies for managing our social media use, whether that's setting time limits, turning off notifications, or scheduling specific times for checking our feeds.
Absolutely. Now, another major time waster that many people struggle with is procrastination. It's the art of putting things off until the last minute, even when we know it's not in our best interest. We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely, Mike. Procrastination is a universal human experience. We all have those tasks that we dread and avoid until the very last minute. It might be a work project, a household chore, or even something as simple as making a phone call.
And there are so many reasons why we procrastinate. Sometimes it's fear of failure, sometimes it's feeling overwhelmed by the task at hand, and sometimes it's simply a lack of motivation or interest. It appears that procrastination is often a symptom of a deeper issue rather than the issue itself.
That's a really insightful point, Mike. It's about understanding the underlying reasons why we're procrastinating so we can address them effectively. For example, if we're procrastinating on a work project because we're afraid of failing, we might need to work on building our confidence or seeking support from colleagues.
And if we're procrastinating on a household chore because it feels overwhelming, we might need to break it down into smaller, more manageable steps or delegate such tasks to someone else.
Exactly. It's about finding the right strategies to overcome our procrastination tendencies and start taking action.
And speaking of taking action, let's not forget about the ever-present distractions that bombard us from all directions in today's digital age. Like we're living in a constant state of information overload, with emails, notifications, text messages, and social media updates vying for our attention every second of the day.
It's a real challenge to stay focused and productive when there's so much competing for our attention. It appears that our brains aren't wired to handle this constant influx of stimuli, and it can lead to feelings of stress, overwhelm, and burnout.
Absolutely. It's like trying to have a conversation in a crowded, noisy room. It's difficult to hear what the other person is saying, and you end up feeling exhausted and drained.
Exactly. So it's crucial to create boundaries between our work and personal lives, set limits on our technology use, and cultivate habits that promote focus and concentration.
So we've identified some of the biggest time wasters, social media procrastination, and distractions. But now comes the million-dollar question. How do we actually combat these time bandits and reclaim control of our precious time, Lily? What are some practical strategies that our listeners can implement to start using their time more effectively?
Well, Mike, the first step is to become more aware of how we're actually spending our time. It's easy to go through the day on autopilot without really paying attention to where our time is going, but if we want to make changes, we need to start by tracking our time and identifying our biggest time sinks. It appears that you can use a simple notebook, a spreadsheet, or one of the many time tracking apps available.
Right. It's like creating a budget for your time. You need to know where your time is going before you can start making adjustments and allocating it more effectively.
Exactly. And once you have a better understanding of your time usage, you can start setting goals and priorities. What are the most important things you want to achieve with your time? What are your short-term and long-term goals? And how can you structure your day to ensure that you're making progress towards those goals?
That's a great point, Lily. It's not just about being busy, it's about being intentional with our time and making sure that we're focusing on the things that truly matter.
And that brings us to the importance of planning and scheduling. I know some people resist the idea of planning because they feel like it restricts their freedom, but in reality, planning can actually give you more freedom because it frees up your mental energy and allows you to be more spontaneous in the moment.
That's so true, Lily. When you have a plan in place, you don't have to waste time and energy trying to figure out what to do next. You can just follow the plan and get things done.
Exactly. And there are so many different ways to plan and schedule. Some people prefer to plan their entire week in advance, while others prefer to plan their day the night before or even first thing in the morning. The key is to find a system that works for you and stick with it.
And you don't be afraid to experiment with different methods until you find one that fits your personality and lifestyle. Some people thrive on detailed to-do lists, while others prefer a more flexible approach. It's all about finding what works best for you.
And remember that planning isn't about creating a rigid, unbreakable schedule. It's about creating a roadmap that guides you towards your goals and helps you stay on track. It appears that it's perfectly fine to deviate from the plan if something unexpected comes up or if you simply need a change of pace.
Absolutely. Life is unpredictable, and we need to be flexible. But having a plan in place gives us a framework to work with and helps us stay focused on what's important.
So we've talked about the importance of tracking our time-setting goals and priorities and planning and scheduling. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of effective time management, which is learning to prioritize ruthlessly.
That's right, Lily. We can't do everything at once, and trying to do so will only lead to overwhelm and burnout. So we need to learn to identify the most important tasks and focus our energy on those first.
And that's where the Eisenhower matrix comes in. It's a simple but powerful tool for prioritizing tasks based on their urgency and importance. Have you ever used the Eisenhower matrix, Mike?
Absolutely. It's a game changer. It helps you categorize tasks into 4 quadrants: urgent and important, not urgent, but important, urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. By focusing on the tasks that are both urgent and important, you can ensure that you're tackling the most critical items first.
It's a great way to avoid getting bogged down in busy work and make sure that you're spending your time on the things that truly move the needle.
And for those tasks that are important but not urgent, you can schedule time for them later in the week or month. This prevents them from falling through the cracks and ensures that you're making progress on your long-term goals.
And for those tasks that are urgent but not important, you can either delegate them to someone else or find a way to streamline or automate them.
And as for those tasks that are neither urgent nor important, well, you can probably just eliminate them altogether.
That's right. It's about freeing up your time and energy for the things that truly matter.
So prioritizing ruthlessly is essential for effective time management, but it's also important to recognize that our energy levels fluctuate throughout the day, and we need to work with our natural rhythms rather than against them.
That's a great point, Mike. We're not robots, and we can't expect to be productive at all hours of the day. So it's important to identify our peak productivity times and schedule our most demanding tasks for those times.
For example, if you're a morning person, you might want to tackle your most challenging tasks first thing in the morning when you're feeling fresh and alert. And if you're a night owl, you might prefer to work on those tasks later in the evening when you're feeling more creative and focused.
Exactly. It's about tuning into your body's natural rhythms and working with them rather than against them.
And it's also important to schedule breaks throughout the day to recharge and avoid burnout. It appears that taking short breaks can actually boost our productivity in the long run because they allow our minds to rest and come back to our work with fresh eyes.
Absolutely. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain. It allows you to come back to your work with renewed focus and energy. We focused a lot on the practical side of time management, like setting goals, planning, and prioritizing. But in this part, we're going to delve a little deeper and explore the psychological and emotional factors that play a role in how we manage our time. Because it's not just about having the right tools and techniques, it's also about understanding our own minds and behaviors.
That's right, Lil. We can have the most sophisticated time management system in the world. But if we're constantly battling our own self-sabotaging tendencies, it's going to be an uphill battle. So let's talk about some of the emotional roadblocks that can get in the way of effective time management.
One of the biggest emotional roadblocks is fear. It appears that fear can manifest in many different forms: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. And these fears can paralyze us and prevent us from taking action on the things that really matter to us.
Absolutely, Willie. We might procrastinate on a project because we're afraid of not doing it perfectly, or we might avoid pursuing a dream because we're afraid of what people will think. And these fears can keep us stuck in a rut and prevent us from reaching our full potential.
So, how do we overcome these fears and start moving forward?
Well, one of the most effective ways to overcome fear is to simply acknowledge it and bring it out into the open. It appears that often our fears are much scarier in our heads than they are in reality. So by naming our fears and talking about them, we can start to diminish their power.
That's so true, Mike. When we keep our fears bottled up inside, they tend to grow and fester. But when we share them with someone we trust, we can gain a new perspective and realize that we're not alone in our struggles.
And once we've acknowledged our fears, we can start to challenge them. Are these fears based on facts, or are they simply irrational beliefs that we've been holding on to for too long? And if they are irrational beliefs, how can we reframe them in a more positive and empowering way?
It's about shifting our mindset from fear to courage, from doubt to belief in ourselves.
Exactly, Lily. And it's not about becoming fearless because fear is a natural human emotion. It's about learning to manage our fear so that it doesn't control us and prevent us from living our best lives.
Another emotional roadblock that can sabotage our time management efforts is perfectionism. Now, on the surface, perfectionism might seem like a positive trait, but when it's taken to an extreme, it can actually be incredibly debilitating and counterproductive.
That's right, Lily. Perfectionists often set impossibly high standards for themselves, and they're constantly striving for flawlessness, which can lead to procrastination, overthinking, and analysis paralysis. They might spend hours tweaking a project or agonizing over every detail, even when it's already good enough.
And the irony is that perfectionism rarely leads to perfection. It actually often leads to the opposite because perfectionists are so focused on getting everything right that they often miss deadlines and fail to deliver on their promises.
It appears that it's a self-defeating cycle. And the thing is, perfectionism is often rooted in a fear of judgment. We're afraid of making mistakes or being perceived as inadequate, so we try to control everything and make sure that everything is perfect.
So how do we break free from the perfectionism trap?
Well, the first step is to recognize that perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist in the real world. And striving for perfection is not only unrealistic, but it's also incredibly stressful and unsustainable.
We need to embrace the idea of good enough and recognize that it's okay to make mistakes. It's how we learn and grow.
Exactly, Lily. And it's about shifting our focus from the outcome to the process, from the need to be perfect to the desire to simply do our best.
And it's about giving ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, to learn from our failures, and to keep moving forward.
Now, another emotional factor that can impact our time management is our energy levels. We've already talked about the importance of working with our natural rhythms and scheduling our most demanding tasks for our peak productivity times. But it's also important to be aware of how our emotions can affect our energy levels.
It appears that when we're feeling stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, our energy levels tend to plummet, and this can make it incredibly difficult to focus, concentrate, and get things done.
Absolutely, Lily. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach. You're going to hit a wall pretty quickly.
So what can we do to manage our emotions and boost our energy levels when we're feeling drained?
Well, one of the most effective ways to manage stress and anxiety is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about noticing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting carried away by them.
And there are many different ways to practice mindfulness. We can meditate, go for a walk in nature, listen to calming music, or simply take a few deep breaths.
It appears that the key is to find a practice that works for you and make it a regular part of your routine.
And in addition to mindfulness, it's also important to take care of our physical health because our physical and mental health are intricately connected. When we're eating nutritious foods, getting enough sleep, and exercising regularly, we have more energy and resilience to cope with stress and challenges.
Absolutely, Lily. It's about taking a holistic approach to our well-being and recognizing that all aspects of our lives are interconnected.
So we've talked about some of the emotional roadblocks that can hinder our time management efforts: fear, perfectionism, and low energy levels. But what about the flip side? What are some of the positive emotions that can actually boost our productivity and motivation?
Well, one of the most powerful emotions is passion. When we're passionate about something, we're naturally more engaged, motivated, and productive. It appears that time seems to fly by, and we're completely absorbed in the task at hand.
That's why it's so important to find work that we're passionate about, or to find ways to inject passion into our existing work. If we're dreading our work every day, it's going to be very difficult to stay motivated and productive.
Another positive emotion that can boost our productivity is gratitude. When we're feeling grateful for the things we have in our lives, we're more likely to be happy, content, and motivated. And this positive mindset can spill over into our work and help us achieve great things.
It's about focusing on the good instead of dwelling on the negative, and it's about appreciating the small things in life as well as the big things.
And finally, one of the most important emotions for effective time management is self-compassion. We all make mistakes, we all have setbacks, and we all have days when we feel unproductive and unmotivated. But instead of beating ourselves up over it, we need to be kind and understanding with ourselves.
It appears that we need to treat ourselves with the same compassion and empathy that we would offer to a good friend.
Exactly, Lily. We need to recognize that we're doing the best that we can with the resources we have. And we need to give ourselves permission to rest, recharge, and come back to our work with renewed energy and enthusiasm.
We delved into the psychological and emotional aspects of time management and explored practical strategies like setting goals, planning, and prioritizing.
But effective time management isn't just about what's going on inside our heads. It's also about creating an external environment that supports our productivity.
That's right, Mike. Our physical surroundings can have a huge impact on our focus, concentration, and motivation.
So in this part of the episode, we're going to talk about some practical tips for optimizing your workspace, minimizing distractions, and setting boundaries to protect your time and energy.
Let's start with the workspace because it's where many of us spend a significant portion of our day, whether we're working from home or in an office.
It appears that a cluttered and disorganized workspace can be a major source of distraction and stress. It can make it difficult to focus, find what we need, and feel motivated to work.
So what are some simple things we can do to create a more organized and productive workspace?
Well, the first step is to declutter and get rid of anything that's not essential. This includes papers, files, gadgets, and anything else that's taking up space and not serving a purpose.
It can be helpful to set aside a specific time each week or month for decluttering and organizing. You can also implement systems for keeping your workspace tidy, like using trays and organizers for papers and files.
And don't forget about the importance of visual appeal. It appears that a clean and aesthetically pleasing workspace can actually boost our mood and motivation. So consider adding some plants, artwork, or other personal touches to your workspace to make it a more inviting and inspiring place to be.
Now let's talk about distractions because they're one of the biggest enemies of productivity. In today's digital age, we're bombarded with distractions from all directions. Our phones, our computers, our colleagues, our families, and even our own wandering minds.
Yeah, it can feel like a constant battle to stay focused and on track.
So what are some strategies for minimizing distractions and reclaiming our focus?
Well, one of the most effective strategies is to turn off notifications on our phones and computers. It appears that every time we get a notification, it interrupts our flow and takes us out of the zone.
It can take several minutes to regain our focus after being interrupted, so it's best to eliminate those interruptions altogether if possible.
And if you can't turn off notifications completely, at least try to minimize them by setting specific times for checking email and social media.
Another helpful strategy is to create a dedicated workspace where you can focus on work without distractions. This might be a separate room in your home or a quiet corner in your office.
And it's important to communicate your boundaries to your family, colleagues, and friends. Let them know that when you're in your workspace, you're not to be disturbed unless it's an emergency.
It appears that setting clear expectations can help reduce interruptions and protect your time and energy.
Now let's talk about boundaries, because they're essential for protecting our time and preventing burnout.
In today's always-on culture, it's easy to feel pressured to be available 24/7, but it's not sustainable in the long run.
We need to set boundaries between our work and personal lives, our professional and social commitments, and even our time for ourselves and our time for others.
It appears that setting boundaries can feel selfish at first, but it's actually an act of self-care. It allows us to recharge our batteries, prevent burnout, and show up as our best selves in all areas of our lives.
So what are some practical ways to set boundaries?
Well, one way is to establish clear working hours and stick to them as much as possible. This means turning off your work phone and email after a certain time and resisting the urge to check work messages outside of work hours.
And it's also important to schedule time for non-work activities like exercise, hobbies, spending time with loved ones, and simply relaxing and recharging.
It appears that these activities might seem frivolous, but they're essential for our well-being and ultimately our productivity.
Another important boundary to set is around social media and technology use. It's easy to get sucked into the endless scroll of social media or the rabbit hole of online content, but it can be a major time drain.
So set limits on your social media use and try to be more mindful of how you're spending your time online.
You can use apps or browser extensions to block distracting websites or set time limits for certain apps.
And don't be afraid to take breaks from technology altogether. It appears that disconnecting from the digital world for a few hours or even a few days can do wonders for our mental health and creativity.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this episode on how to stop wasting time and become more productive.
We've explored the psychological and emotional aspects of time management, discussed practical strategies for optimizing our workspace, minimizing distractions, and setting boundaries, and shared tips for working with our natural rhythms and energy levels.
But ultimately, effective time management is a personal journey, and what works for one person might not work for another.
It's about experimenting with different strategies, finding what works best for you, and making time management a habit that supports your goals, values, and overall well-being.
So as we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with a few final thoughts. Remember that time is our most precious resource. It's finite, and once it's gone forever. So use it wisely and invest it in the things that truly matter to you. Don't let distractions steal your time or your dreams. Be intentional with your time, set goals, prioritize ruthlessly, and create an environment that supports your productivity. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. It's a journey, not a destination.
Thank you for joining us on English Podcast Flow today. We hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Until next time, make every minute count. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.